Just want to take a quick view of what it looks like to go on a world cruise. We're gonna start about 10:15 and then we'll end before 11, so if you want to go upstairs, catch your ride service, we'll have plenty of time to do that. And then, you know, there's still some more things we want to talk about, I'll just hang around and some questions and answers. Whatever you want to do before we finish up. We have to leave early or the service or something.
Here, I think it's the badge, We'll be back after I know what terribly, but she doesn't dress that much. Shit, you going up, huh? That's right. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thank you so much for the full house today. I know it's a little warm in here. Hopefully I can fan yourself a little. We don't have a whole lot of air movement in this room. My name is Carrie Hosby and welcome to Third Sunday Forum. Did you want to introduce yourself? I'm Anna Hughes. I'm our Faith Life leader, which Faith Life is our group here at CUMC that helps not only find wonderful speakers for our forums, but also finds or helps coordinate connect groups, discipleship groups. So if you're looking for ways to get involved, please come and talk to me or one of our other Faith Life members. And Steve, I think I'll let
since a lot of your presentation is personal, I'll let you introduce yourself.
I will introduce myself. Thanks for coming. This is fantastic. Today, we're gonna talk about a worldwide cruise. I'm seeing the all 6 continents in just a. Is this better?
Yeah.
Would I talk faster?
No.
Higher, deeper? There's a lot of different things to look at in a round the world cruise, and today we're gonna talk about spirituality and religion over time and from the prehistoric, not prehistoric, but from the ancient to the current. And the first thing is, every place I went, there was some form of spirituality or religion. There was some praying to the gods somewhere. It was different kinds, of course, different approaches, but everybody had something. So I want to go over that with you today. So this is me in Barcelona. Can you guys see this? Familiar church, that big old thing. And if you notice, I'm wearing a Barcelona soccer shirt because that's their true religion there. Yeah. Next I go. Let me give you a little background. Just indulge me for a couple of minutes where we talk about how do I end up on a boat going around the world? And it's gonna go back 50 years. So if you know, let's do this first of all. This is what we're gonna talk about today. When I say around the world, that's all 6 continents, excluding Antarctica, the Atlantic Ocean, Pacific Ocean, Indian Ocean. And these routes were taken by Magellan, Cook, Drake, the Indian Ocean slave trade. I mean, these are the routes. They really haven't changed much over the years. And we took it on a big old cruise liner too. And there's just something about going around the world. This is Port Everglades in Fort Lauderdale, major port with that. And on January 4th, we went west at 18 knots, and 4.5 months later, we came in on the other side at 18 knots and caught Port Everglades again. And made a few stops along the way. That's what we're gonna talk about today. Today, as you know, is January 20th, 2025. And that's important because 56 years ago, we landed on the moon. July. Yeah, July 20th, 1955. Today is July 20th. 2025, and on July 20th, 1969, we landed on the moon. That's important because it was the most watched event ever and still holds true today. 150 million Americans watched that landing. 94% of the people that were had a TV at that time were watching the moon landing. Those numbers have never been surpassed. 650 million people watched it around the world. So this was a pretty much unifying event, and that was pretty cool. And those of a certain age might remember what they were doing during that moon landing. I was 14 years old, just came down from Minneapolis, moving to Rochester. And I was in my dad's apartment because he was gonna open a grocery store, and I had a little label maker, and I was putting names on Barlow Foods name tags, one after another, as they were landing. I spent my summer of '69 in a supermarket. Mother and my sisters came back later, and then I was gonna start my 3 years of high school. So the grand opening of Barlow Foods was July 27th in 1969. There were blue laws back then. Yeah. And I remember in Minneapolis, where my dad had a store that he just sold in order to build this one. As grocers, you always go around and look at other stores. And he went to a Shopper City, if you remember that, in St. Louis Park on a Sunday, a couple months before the opening. And they were doing nothing but business. And that's when he says, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna open Sundays in the new town. And he had the grand opening on a Sunday. First time blue laws in Minnesota. The next week, every grocery store was open and all that. Just by the way, proclaims Barlow Foods Day, it's Food Day Independent Businessmen. I got one from, the US and one from local and all that kind of stuff. So in 1969, I was going to high school, working in a grocery store, and I basically did that. Got my education, went out and worked in New York and Chicago, I did a bunch of stuff, moved back to Rochester in the early 80s, and Dad and I built supermarkets for about 12 years together. I took over, basically majority interest in the early 90s. The industry had changed quite a bit, and I sold the store in 1997. Okay, and that was basically the first time I had Steve time. Because as retailers and real estate guys and everything else, you just work a lot, and don't get me wrong, we went to a lot of conventions and did a lot of things. But really, outside the business, not too much. So in 97, I went from, I had over 1,000 employees. At one time, we were the fourth largest private employer in Rochester. There's a big gap between 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So we were top 5 as far as employment. It was kind of a big deal. So now I had some Steve time, and like normal people decide, well, I should probably get a place in Arizona or Florida or something like that. And none of that really enticed me. So what I did, well, boat. That's what you do. That's a 30-ton, 52-foot header is the non-compete, which wasn't named after my lack of competitiveness. It was named after a clause I signed with Hy-Vee, who gave me some money not to do anything. I said, I can do that. I can do that. So I went out and got this boat and became a Coast Guard boat captain for 10 years. And I've always had a Minnesota address but for those years, for about 15 years, I spent a lot of time between Key West and Miami, between Ocean Breeze, Key West and such. And did that too. I kept the real estate, so Barlow Plaza was mine 20 years after we sold the supermarket, so that brings it up to 2017, and I was working on that sale with the Polad company between 2015 and 2019. So again, always having a Minnesota address, I had a house in Red Wing, and if you remember, every Sunday morning, I would leave Red Wing, pick up Mom, we'd come to church, we'd go to the inquiring spirits and such, did that all the time. Got the real estate sold in 2019, it was time for me to move on to the next phase of my life, which was undetermined, but it was gonna be something, and I knew it was gonna be something cool. And I sold a place in Red Wing, moved in with Mom. And that was gonna last about 6 weeks. And then I was gonna move on. The 6 weeks turned into 6 months, which turned into 6 years. COVID, illness, whatever, glorious years, and you kept seeing her come in here. Then Mom passed away. She was almost 96 years old, and you guys have all done wonderful services here in her honor. But then I had Steve time. Money was good, kids was good, family was good, everything was kind of settled, so now it's 1st of January, and it's like, well, I like boats. I like road trips. And I looked around and I found that Holland America was gonna leave on January 4th. I was gonna be out of the house on January 1st. And when I could do this, it's 4.5 months. And I wasn't sure what kind of people were on a boat like this, what kind of people took a trip like this, what their age was, where they were from, anything. But I figured it's probably gonna be like our congregation, there's gonna be some young people, there's gonna be some, not so young people. They're all gonna be adventurers, they're probably gonna be experienced, they're gonna be interesting people. I don't know, maybe not, but I figured we get on board and we'll figure it out later. So, as you can see, January 4th to May 9th, 6 continents, 3 oceans. That's the Zider Dam right there, and it held about 1,500 passengers, about 900 staff. Of the 1,500 that started, about 700 of it went around the world. Some got off and others got on and such, but those were the ones doing the full tour. So that's the before picture. That's us leaving Saturday night, January 4th out of Port Everglades, and that's a selfie saying we're on our way. There's no turning back unless you. It takes a lot of work to turn back. So a couple of days later, we crossed the equator. We crossed the equator 4 times. South, north, south, north. The furthest north we were was Rome and Barcelona, which was about 39 degrees, 41 degrees. For comparison, Rochester's 44 degrees. Okay. And the further south we went was Cape Town and Sydney, Australia, both around 30, just under 34 degrees. Miami is 25 degrees north, Rio de Janeiro is about 25 degrees south, just to kind of give you an idea of where we're going. So now that's enough of that. Let's go talk about spiritualism, gods, beliefs, and everything else. I'm going to be jumping around the map some. So just kind of stay with me. We're going to start in Lima, Peru, because that's where the Incas are. And they had their own version. This guy, Mr. Larco, Senor Larco, put together a museum in 26. It's just fantastic. And in there, they talk about the Incan human sacrifices. And they did that because it ritually transformed the victim, and the life being offered to the gods gave the transformed individual sacred status. Tough way to go, but they believe that. And that's purely religion there. And this is a whole discussion. There's a lot of other things going on other than that, but that's the human sacrifices of the Incas. And then just outside of Lima is, this is hard to pronounce, but it's Packet Mac ruins, which is being fully restored. So it'd be another Machu Picchu or something like that. The Incas were here. They were doing their thing. They found it. It's only 20 kilometers outside of Lima, and they're restoring it right now. So that's our first stop on the gods. We're going to start with the ancient beliefs and such, but you can see how it starts and how much work they have to do. Their drawings and such, and it looks like a big top. We saw more things that were a pile of dirt that they started digging around, and they found something, particularly the Roman ruins in Cartagena and Ephesus and such. If you feel better, the Incas believed in a healthy sex life after death. So there was a spot in the museum that had to do with what would look like erotic sculptures and such, but they were praising the activities of the deceased and the ancestors. So they got that going for them. Ecuador, there were some guys in Ecuador. It was really the first time the natives, this guy, where the burials were in an earthen jar with possessions of them to help them get to the next life. Which again looks a little odd, but that was it. So this is what they did in Ecuador. And if you think about being buried with possessions in order to grant access to a higher power, the first thing you think of is Isa. Nobody did it better than that.
Yeah.
That's right. Now, I know the screen's not very large, but that's me. So let's spend a little bit of time, because not only are we looking at the pyramids here, I got to go inside the Grand Egyptian Museum, which still isn't open. Still isn't open. They were going to open July 12th after 20 years of delays. They had government problems, you know, April, spring, they had all kinds of problems, 20 years worth of problems. And they swore that they're going to open it on July 12th, and then Iran and Israel started bombing each other, and they said, maybe we should wait a little bit, so it's still not open. So these are the pyramids, and I'm gonna show you steps that go to the top in this museum, and then you look out this window to the pyramids, and it's just phenomenal. It's taken a long time to get this thing open, but it's the most fascinating thing I've ever seen. But through the sarcophagus and the mummification and such, that was there in order to help. They believe that this helped gain access to a better life. Yeah, that's not gonna go over share it and go this way. So that gave you a little bit of what it sounds like there. This is the Grand Egyptian Museum, and it's enormous. It says it's the world's largest museum, and yeah, it's enormous. A lot of you have probably been to the Cairo Museum, but if you've been to the Field Museum in Chicago or the Natural History in New York or something, this sucker is amazing. So you start out and you go up these stairs, and in the stairs, they have all kinds of different statues and honors and such. And they also have on the right side an evolution of the development and growth of pyramids. And they keep that up. This is on the top of the staircase looking down, and you can see there. Oops. Yeah, we'll leave that there. Looking down, and then when you get to the top, after walking all those stairs, you can take an escalator. We're gonna get to a place later that has 272 stairs, with no escalator. But here you had an escalator. And you could watch everything come together, and you watch the evolution on how pyramids were built, and you get to the top, and then you oversee the great towers. The pyramids of Giza, were built 4000 BC, and they were the tallest man-made structure until 1887. Isn't that amazing? It was finally beat by the Eiffel Tower in Paris. It's just amazing what this feat was. Inside the museum, there's a whole room for King Tut, because that's pretty popular. There's a room for the Khufu solar boats. That's awesome. Those suckers still sail, but they don't because they're kind of valuable. And then, then you saw the big staircase. There's some big areas with some other stuff, and then they have the museum set into 12 different spots. It's 3 across. It's 4 by timeline, which period is there, and then it has to do with society and the kingdom and the beliefs, and they have every room set up in one of those quadrants. It's just fantastically put together. And pillar magnificent. The ceiling is high, and they have big stuff in there, and it just keeps going. And then again, when you get to the top, you look out the window and you get to see the pyramids. This doesn't look very much, but those pyramids are about 2 kilometers from the museum, and they're building a walkway. That's the building of the walkway, which is supposed to be there. So if you get a ticket to once it's open, the Grand Egyptian Museum, GEM, you'll be able to walk to the pyramids. And those of you that have been to the pyramids know that there's a lot of camels and a lot of merchants and a lot of stuff around there. And people that are flying to Cairo in order to see this may not want that. Well, they're putting it all together, and around the pyramids now, they're building stores and walkways and pushing the other stuff out there. So you'll go to the museum, walk to the pyramids and the Sphinx, and be able to do, they're really cleaning it up, and it's not far away. Okay, religion. So now we've seen that. How about the ancient Greeks that actually built their own heaven? They built their own Olympus, the temple of Zeus in Athens. They're trying to restore it and everything else, but it's magnificent. And the Greeks had their own gods and everything that they honored, but Zeus was a big one, and it was a big deal to the Greeks. This is Circus Maximus in Italy, where that's where martyrs and the Christians were killed. It wasn't the Colosseum, it was at Circus Maximus, so all the stuff you've heard about that. And they had their own, the Romans had their own gods also. This is still Circus Maximus in there. And they went through a lot of evolution. In the Colosseum, that's all well and good and cool. But the Basilica is right next door now to the Colosseum. And it's just a phenomenal place. And this is all honoring Jesus and everything else you'd expect out of Roman Catholicism. The Pope gave a speech on Easter Sunday, died on Monday. I was there on Tuesday. In Rome, the day after the Pope dies, we weren't sure what was going on. I got access to the inside of Roman Colosseum, so I went there, but there were some people that were going to the Vatican. I've already been to the Vatican before, but they could still get there on that Tuesday. But boy, there was helicopters flying all over the place because the ceremony was that Saturday. This is inside Basilica Clement, very interesting stuff. And again, honoring Jesus. This talks about limbo, which we're not going to get into, but Dante is in coming up. And this is underground, so they were actually here under the Colosseum next door to it. All right, let's go to Easter Island. Again, I'm on a boat, so you can go to places on boats that you necessarily can't get other places. Easter Island is one of them. It's a hard port to land into, so even though it's scheduled, it's hard to get to. But this place, 2,200 miles west of the coast of Chile. And that's the closest thing to it. That makes it the most remote inhabited place on Earth. About 8,000 people live there. These are the Moais that you know, and let's talk about that and what they believe was there. They believe the spirit of the individual was in the statues, and most of these were gravestones. So they found bones beneath them, and then based on your rank was the hat, the eyes, and everything else in there. And they built a ton of these things. Now I was going to be on Easter Island for 2 days, and we couldn't catch all the Moais. So the first day I climbed to the top of the highest point in Easter Island, which is the only point within a lot of miles, just to see what the view looked like. Then the second day, I was gonna go back, take a look at the Moais. So this is going to Mount Teravaca, 1,600 feet, obviously from sea level. It's the highest point on the island, and it's pretty spectacular. This guy is my guide, and he's telling us all kinds of things in there, including what it's like to live on Easter Island. Is that better?
Yeah.
What they like to live on Easter Island. First of all, this is the Rapanui that live there, and in order to have citizenship on Easter Island, you have to be at least 50% Rapanui. That restricts a lot, okay? He was ecstatic because he found a girlfriend that wasn't his cousin. So we walked to the top of the mountain, and then won't be some sound here, but this is what the view is like at the top of Easter Island, looking at everything else. Pretty spectacular. And again, all of these statues, and there's a lot of them. There's hundreds and hundreds of these things. They all look inward. Every one of them. None of them look out to the ocean. They all look in to protect the island. Again, you can see the hats. These had to be dignitaries, the different rock and such. Bones beneath it, and the spirit of the Rapa Nui and the individuals are there for these things. They all had different names, different platforms and such. But this one is where they were all built. They were all built in the same place on this mountain with volcanic rock on it. And you can see, you know, here's one over there, and in here they're carving one out. Here's one in there. Here's a lot that didn't make it to the platforms and such. But again, they're all looking inward. Pretty cool. except this one, Ahuakibi was built to honor the people that discovered Easter Island. They thought they came from, a long ways away. And those are actually looking out, and there's no bones there. This is the only one that wasn't used as burial. And this guy, remember our friend? He's gonna tell you about what it's like here. See if we can get this to go.
Seven statues. They are the representation of seven explorers. They found the island here for first time 1,000 years ago. The only statues, they don't have a crown in this platform and no human bones on the ground. It's a very unique area. The statue we are looking behind of me, the Moai statue, is our tombstone, how we protect our important symbols. In the 1,050 statues in total, in a period of 400 years, between 1200 until 1600, they believe the statues, they keep the spirit of religion. It was the religion of the Rabbanu people for that time. They did in total 297 platforms. That's one of them, but the only one didn't want it.
Could you hear that?
No.
That's too bad because it was really cool. All right, keeping on with ancient, here's the Acropolis. This was built, the Parthenon was built to honor Diana, the goddess. And you can see the big hill up there and stuff. This was one of my favorites. In South Africa, I got to hang with the Zulus. And this is kind of their sacred place, the Valley of a Thousand Hills. And being sacred means the tribes just used to beat each other up over trying to get this, and now it's a vacant. But look at that view, is that something? So these are Zulus, they're, South Africa is about 90% black. And, most of the blacks are from the Zulu nation. So this is the Valley of a Thousand Hills up there. And I got to take a helicopter up there to look around, and it was absolutely spectacular. One of the prettiest spots on earth is Moria in French Polynesia. You know, the 7 islands that make up French Polynesia, or Tahiti, Moria, Raiatea, a couple more. This is Moria, and I'm going to show you that because even here on this beautiful spot, look how pretty that is. They have legends of stuff, and then you're not gonna be able to hear this guy either. What he's saying right now is within these grounds was an area of sacrifice, and even today, nobody walks in there, and they said sacrifice was animals, fruit, and humans. So that's, you can see this walled in area.
That's important. But to go inside, if you go to your home, that's how we get it for you.
So no one goes inside there. That's Moria, one of their ancient groups. All right, let's get away from the ancients now. Let's go to the Muslims. Because we saw a whole bunch of Muslim stuff. Now, there's 22 nations, 22 countries in the Arab League. I only went to 2, Egypt and Morocco. But we went to a lot of Islam countries that aren't necessarily in the Arab League. The Maldives, when you think of the Maldives, you think of these exotic, beautiful islands that people go to, private stuff and everything else. The capital of the Maldives is Malé. Malay's got a little over 200,000 people in there, and it is Islamic. They follow Islamic law. They scowled at everybody, and this place had just a terrible vibe, and I'm in the Maldives going, it was awful. The women didn't feel comfortable walking around. Now, we always have respect for other cultures, so they would cover themselves up, but, not full. Jeep and so on and so forth. You can't be a citizen unless you're a Muslim. We're all Muslims. That is the Golden Dome of the Islamic Center. This is a friend from the cruise who wanted to walk with a guide. And you can see a hat, long sleeves. They said if you go to the beach, cover up there. Ankles, legs, everything needs to be covered. In Maldives, this place, it was the mosque that was built in 1658. this mosque was there. So we wanted to go inside. And again, it takes a little cover and so on and so forth. There's guys out there scouting saying cover up. So a mosque is built in this remote place in 1658. Again, this is the Islamic. This is the government. You can see the Islamic Center is there. So Malay is kind of a horseshoe and it's pretty well built up. And there's an airport over here, and when I was noticing planes were flying in and they wouldn't go to Malay. They would get directly on a boat, go to one of these 26 islands. Some were private, some were resorts, and there you didn't need to cover up on the beach when there was parking all these. You can see these boats just taking off, going to one of these places. You can see the reef around it. I went diving in there. This is in Sri Lanka, the Lotus Tower. Sri Lanka is a very poor country, very poor. And it was important to build the Lotus Tower. It's very, very tall. I took this during our sail away, so whenever we went to port, we would leave that evening and go to the next port, and the sailaways were a lot of fun. We could see some stuff. And I thought the Lotus Tower was really, really pretty. Let's move from that. Let's go to our Hindu friends. So Bali is 100%, it's 87% Hindu. But look at this. This is pretty interesting. All of that light blue, that's Indonesia. Okay, this is Borneo. This is still part of Malaysia. There's Brunei in there. And you can see that half of Guinea is there. And right there is Bali. Okay. Indonesia is a very populated country, as you probably know, 285 million, it's the sixth largest country by population in the world. And Indonesia is a Islamic nation. Bali has 4.5 million people on this little tiny island over here that I've heard of, and they're 80%, 87% Hindu. It's in their constitution, they have to get along. And quite frankly, Bali gets along because they're pretty well by themselves. And we didn't go to Jakarta and Java and some of the others. Jakarta, you know, is the second largest city in the world behind Tokyo, 32 million or something like that, bigger than anything in China. And most people don't go there. Because it's kind of repressed or such. But here's that tiny little island, that's Bali, and it's Hindu, and boy, is it Hindu. There are more Hindu temples in Bali than houses. Because most houses have a temple in the house, and then they have other temples. It impacts everything they do, their dress, their activities, everything. Here's a place that was built a long, long time ago, the Ulan Danu Bertrand, and it was just a beautiful place. It's on one of the lower twin lakes that we'll get to, just spectacular, absolutely spectacular. Hindu temples everywhere and been around for hundreds of years. Isn't that pretty? If you want to read their warning to tourists, number 5 says menstruating women are not allowed inside. How about the sacred monkey forest? This was great. Monkeys all over the place. That was also in Bali. That's my spirit animal right there. And these, that's the entrance. These are nutmeg trees. And that had a lot to do with the Dutch West Indies. Nutmeg trees. A lot to do with it. Monkeys everywhere. There's a couple right there, there's a couple over there. And then you can see the Hindu statues and such. Away from Bali, we looked over the Twin Lakes. It was kind of rainy and muggy then. And you can see the lake in the background and such is on the bottom over there, where the Hindu temple is. And a night market, of course, in Bali. That's where I got this shirt. Hello, Bali. This is very Very Indonesian, very Indonesian. We're gonna move on to, more Hindu stuff. I got a couple things that are pretty cool. This is Malaysia. Malaysia, Brunei, this is all Malaysia. Virtually all the population lives here. Singapore right at the end. When the British, they were in Malaysia, and they left because the Japanese kicked them out while they were getting bombed in England in World War II. The Japanese came in to the Malay Peninsula. So the British came out, they came back in the late forties, early fifties. By that time, the Malays wanted their independence. The British said, you guys can't handle it. You won't be able to get along with each other. And they said, let's try. And we can. And they did, and they got their independence in the fifties, mid-50s. And then in 1965, Singapore says, you know, we can do our own thing here. So they split off, and became an independent nation in 1965. But you can see they're still pretty much Islamic, but there's some Buddhists and Christians and Hindus. The Petronia Towers were the tallest buildings in the world for a while. They're still the tallest twin towers in the world. This is taller than the World Trade Center. This is in Kuala Lumpur. And if you notice, that's a Islamic geometric pattern that they did. So even on this kind of stuff. All right, now we're in Kuala Lumpur. Let's go to the Batu Caves. Have anybody heard the Batu Caves? Yeah, there you go. Pretty awesome, huh? It's this cave system that the Hindus said this would be a great place for a temple. So this is, oops. Won't be able to get, it's 272 stairs. There's no escalator or stuff like that. You walk up, you get to the top, you look back down, and once you're inside, it's mind bending. Just mind bending. And then once you're inside, you get to take more stairs. And then look down on this, but isn't that spectacular? And that's been around for 150 years or something, and basically it's the Hindus worshiping their gods. And again, monkeys, there's a couple more monkeys in there. And really, really nice looking. In Thailand, the Hindus have their lighthouse, which is there to honor Pritam. One is God and one is corner, and it's overlooking the ocean with some Hindu stuff in there. Let's move to the Buddhist, because we're gonna go to Chelong Temple, and this place again was spectacular. You can see how there are all these different structures out there. And an active Buddhist temple. This is one of my favorite pictures. She's actually engaged in worship at the time, and this isn't a doctored photo. The light is actually shining on her right there. You know, makes you kind of want to think of all that. Okay, so let's go to some of our Catholics and Protestants and so on and so forth. You guys know this Grotto Familia. This place is crazy. In Barcelona, there was an architect named Gaudi. And he did parks and he did things that looked like Lord of the Rings. And that was his style, and that's the Barcelona style. And he designed this in the late 1800s. They've been building it ever since. They say they're close to being done.
It's done.
What?
Last September, it was finished.
Yeah, they're still working on it, but it's amazing. You can go inside of it. Yeah, I mean, you can get tickets and go inside of it. Barcelona, Barcelona is a town of about 3.5 million. And about 2/3 of its income comes from tourism. And when you think of Barcelona, you think about being self-sustaining, industry and all that kind of stuff. Now, 2/3 tourism. So the money they're spending into their soccer arena, into this church, this is a very, very popular event. They've really upped the building of this. And you can see the whole Gaudi stuff in there. There's a lot of cranes around here and so on and so forth. But it's pretty amazing. When you go in there, I didn't get the, spiritualism like you get in a lot of them. It almost looked like that was Gaudi. All right, let's go to Ephesus, and we're gonna move this along. You know that the Virgin Mary was supposedly, this was her last house. And, there it is. This is where they have sacred baptisms and holy water and such. This was pretty cool. This is also in Ephesus. You go to places where things have happened. I've been to Hemingway's houses where he wrote his in Havana and Key West where he wrote his books. I've been to Muscle Shoals where they recorded some of the greatest music around there. I'm a big fan of Stax. I've been to Memphis and gone inside the Stax stuff. And all you want to do is try to feel what's the magic that went on with all of this good stuff. Well, Ephesus is where St. John was buried, as you know, and then when he was exiled just a little ways away from here, he wrote Revelation, probably. He wrote the Revelations. No, yes. Revel. He had 3 copies. Only one made it to the final cut.
Just a quick heads up, it's a few minutes before 11 in case anyone's needing to get upstairs for 11 o'clock services.
All right. I will not be offended. So this was all at St. John's and the life of St. John's, and then it's wherever you go. Remember I said there is a spiritualism and a church and something going on everywhere. This is Tahiti. It's the part of French Polynesia that you would think would have the least amount of religion. But there, this is 150 years old and the centerpiece of theirs. In the Cook Islands, which was English, in Tonga, this was a bunch of happy kids jumping off a tire. Well, that was it's just crazy. This is what you do in Cook Islands. Instead of putting on jerseys and going down to Little League, you put a pier and put a tire on it and just watch the kids jump off. Which is kind of a stop action thing there. Nevertheless, the St. Joseph Catholic Church is in Cook Islands. And it's just beautiful. It has a drum in it, so you know, I like that. They'll go to Tonga. Tonga is an amazing place. The missionaries went to Tonga a long time ago. Their presence and what they did to that place is certainly there. You're still close to French Polynesia. You're not Islamic. You are Methodist, a lot of Mormons, Catholic. In 1839, they converted around Protestant. They cover up, but still island. So it's more of a conservative island. And you come here from Tahiti where it's all sarongs. This is people working there that fit in there. They make a paper out of there. This young lady was doing this artwork, which was great, but again, you can see how they're covered, but in a more of a conservative dress than anything. Ancient Tonga doesn't exist anymore except for tourists. They just don't dance like that anymore. One of their favorite places, if you are able to go to BYU, that from Tonga, there's a couple really young because we have everything else, so it's a big deal for them. And there was this is a lake in a cave that freshwater you could go swimming, so I did. That has nothing to do with the presentation, but as you can tell, we're jumping around different places and such. Inside the boat, they would change their carpet. They would tell you what day it was. The first day I saw that. And then one day they missed doing the carpets and I got all messed up. Let's go to Singapore. Singapore had its independence in 1965 and a family started to rule it. That same family is ruling it. Singapore's only ever had one family ruling it. They're keeping everybody economically happy. This was built by the British. British also put in railroads to get tin and such. Here's St. Anthony's Cathedral from 1819. And it's a very spectacular place. There's 27 churches from around the area right now. And you can see this breakdown. And actually, they actually say no religion, 20%. Normally in these countries, we just don't see that. This is St. Andrews. And then they built a whole new sanctuary that they use, and it's a big massive place. They also have the Cathedral of Good Shepherd. And then if you go into some of the areas, they have Taoism and such. This is a Taoist church. It's spectacular. Malta, we go to Malta. Malta is this little piece of land right here, okay? And it has kind of geographical importance. Because everybody overran it. You know, they wanted to have that location, so Ottomans and Persians, and everybody, poor Malta. You can see the boot of Italy, this is Sardinia and Corsica and Morocco. This is Tunisia. So Malta was always having some problems and such, and finally, Italy wasn't a country, they had all those little fiefdoms inside of Italy. And the guy that was closest to Malta said, "Hey, Knights of St. John, you don't have a home anymore. You've been kicked out of everything you've ever done because, you know, you're a little ruthless. So once you take over Malta and stay there." So they did. They went there in 1550 and stayed for 250 years. And they fortified it. They fortified it. And they fortified it. And the Knights of St. John didn't go any more crusades. They stayed there. They added an education system. They fortified the whole thing. They stayed until the 1800s. They ran into some problem. This is Medina in Malta, very, very sacred to them. And a lot of processions. They said their Easter procession was a big deal. And again, these are the guys that basically fought the Crusades against the Ottoman Empire. Sardinia, their neighbor, this is their flag. This is still their flag today. The flag of the four Moors. And they've had different things over time where they've been blindfolded and whatever, but basically Sardinia really went after them. Okay, if I say Pitcairn Island, you know where that is and why that's important? It is, it is. This is the island the mutineers from the Bounty went to. Okay? And if you watched the movie or heard the stories and such, they launched a mutiny. They needed a place to run from the English Navy because they were in big trouble. And they found Pitcairn Island that was mapped wrong. And they stayed there for a while. We couldn't get on Pitcairn Island, but Pitcairn Island came to us. That's what these people are. It's a Saturday. They're coming with their goods and everything else. They're gonna get on our ship and do a lot of things. And a lot didn't come because they're Seventh-day Adventists and they have church. They couldn't come. And they don't get boats coming by that. So these are all citizens doing their thing. This is the mayor of Pitcairn Island. And they're doing special things because it's hard to get to Pitcairn Island. And then we said goodbye to them. It's only 46 of them. There's only 46 people living on Pitcairn Island right now. It's an English protectorate, just like Bermuda, Gibraltar. It's the least populated one, but it is. There were things. Christian Fletcher was 8 generations ago, and his offspring are still there. And if you want to move to Pitcairn Island, you can. There's a process in getting there. Everybody wants to go to their own remote island. You can do it. Lisbon built Christ the King right after the Christ the Redeemer in Rio de Janeiro. Portugal said, "Hey, you know, Brazil used to be ours. We should have one." Yeah. And then they found a bridge that looked a lot like the Golden Gate Bridge, and they started building it right after the Golden Gate Bridge was built in the 30s, but it took them about 25 or 30 years to get it done, but that's pretty fun. Processions in Cartagena, April 11th was 10 days before Easter. It was a Thursday, and they started processions. They had processions every day. And the young guys are getting graduated, and by the time the procession started, we had left, but you could see all the work going on. This is the robes they wear, and boy, I would have liked to have seen that because I talked to some of the people, like, really? But yes, Yeah, that is sacred wares. And you can tell they sell these chairs quite a bit. And then here's a church in San Juan, it's over 500 years old. They say the bones of Ponte buried there. It's pretty cool. This guy is telling us who he is and what their church is and everything else, but this is the Silver Mound there, the peace center. And that's a beautiful place. This is San Sebastian, and I put that up there because it's St. Stephen's Martyr, except drawn by Puerto Rican, so they made it a Hispanic figure and made it look local, and I don't think it loses any of the meaning of what they were trying to convey. So when everything is all well and done, you can go around the world, you can see all of these religions and so on and so forth. And if you can't go to your place, sometimes maybe your place will come to you. So on Easter Sunday, we're in the Ionian Sea in the middle of the ocean at sunrise. And we had our Easter sunrise service in the middle of the ocean. On board, there was a pastor, Pastor Reed from Newfoundland. There was a Rabbi Sarah and a priest. They all came up to do this. And this is just them singing their songs. That's our pastor and such. But you can always come home. You can always come doing your own thing. So thank you. Let me throw a couple of things up here. If anybody is interested in doing a cruise, Holland America is not the only one that does it. This is their new logo, and this was actually a drone show that we did in Spain, which is kind of cool. Savor the Journey is their thing. This is my Gmail. If you ever want to hear me, this is Holland America. If you want to look at what future cruises are coming up, Canard is the Queen Mary and that kind of stuff. Oceana, Seabourn, they're pretty expensive. Princess, MSC. This is Viking, and this is Regent Seven Seas, and I've got all of those. If you want to go on the website and see what it is, I told people you can spend anywhere from 2,500 a week, 2,000 a week. Up to a lot more, depending on what you're trying to do. Yeah, so cool, huh? Yeah, every place has a really fun. And again, you can do nature, you can do culture, you can do race and all that. This one we wanted to focus in on the ancient religions. We did the Islams, we did the Hindus, and so on and so forth. And you realize that, you know, it's okay. It's okay. So thank you.
If you didn't see, there's a couple of cards back there with magnets. You pick up a magnet at each stop, so it's a lovely visual representation of your trip. Anyone have any questions or comments for Steve?
How was life on the boat for 4 months? Did you start to feel claustrophobic or let me off?
I never did. You know, it's like a 10-story building that's
Yeah.
football field fly. It's a major building. There's all kinds of big activities, restaurants on site. It's always go outside. Plus COVID and this.
I have to say too, we still.
I put this on as a boat. We actually went through the town by today. I was going on board. Yeah.
Yeah, it is one thing and I know that.
All these fuels and way, ocean transfer down everything. Very the boats down, it's quite common, all you. Meetings in the skyline.
Just inches on the other side of the Panama Canal too.
That's what you have to say the most night. Yeah, most cities are probably a little bit different.
Oh.